Hello and welcome to one of those videos where I talk all about what Tinto Talks is talking about, and this time we are talking about the Black Death, the Great Plague, the pestilence that ravaged Eurasia quite severely, starting in 1346. I think it's 1346. I might get my dates wrong. Whatever. Let's go and have a look at how the Black Death appears in EU5 and essentially what happens, right? I have played EU5. I have played multiple games where the Black Death has ravaged my country severely. And so maybe I'll be able to give a little bit of extra context to some of the events, maybe give some context to some of the effects that are happening to your country as you're going through, and maybe give a little bit of my experience. Yeah, let's jump in, and have a look and see what it is we're going to be experiencing in EU5 with the Black Death. So, it will be slightly different from others, as it will be presented in more detail than other situation-related talks, almost being an AR. I love this. Already, I love this. ARs are great. I love them. So, without further ado, it is AD 1346. I was correct. And some news arrives in Poland. Alas, our ship entered the port, but of 1,000 sailors, hardly 10 are spared. We reach our homes. Our kindred and our neighbours come from all parts to visit us. Woe to us, for we cast at them the darts of death. Whilst we spoke to them, whilst they embraced us and kissed us, we scattered the poison from our lips. Going back to their homes, they in turn soon infect their whole families, who in 3 days succumbed and were buried in one common grave. Priests and doctors visiting the sick returned from their duties ill, and soon were numbered with the dead. O death! Cruel, bitter, impious death! Which thus breaks the bonds of affection and divides father and mother, brother and sister, son and wife. Lamenting our misery, we feared to fly, yet we dared not remain. Rats! Anyway, no, cool. Love the flavor text. Flavor text is awesome. Super. I'm enthusiastic about things that increase immersion, and this immerses me in the world that I'm going to be playing in. So the situation: father, abandoned child, wife, husband, one brother, another, for this illness seemed to strike through the breath and sight. And so they died, and none could be found to bury the dead for money or friendship. Members of a household brought their dead to a ditch as best they could, without priests, without divine officers. Great pits were dug and piled deep with a multitude of dead, and they died by the hundreds both day and night. And as soon as those ditches were filled, more were dug. Yeah, it's, that's cool. You may notice a new feature on this situation alert tip. It is a hint, a system that we now have in EU5 to help and guide the players with different mechanics and features. If we did click on it, we'll get the following on the right side of the screen. We get the hints area, telling you all about the Black Death situation. It'll ravage the old world, following the trails of trade and civilization. Most deadly in our densely populated locations, and will fade away once enough survivors have built up disease resistance to it. People of every social class will die of the plague, leaving our buildings empty until new peasants promote. This part, I think, is the sticking point for people who have claimed that the Black Death is not impactful enough. Means our tax base will likely shrink, the output of our buildings collapses, and our pop promotion speed will be very important to recover the lost employment. So it also gives you recommended actions, so this tip is like super useful. It wants you to build hospitals in urban locations. Click situation banner to take a look at the special interactions you can do. Keep your stability high. Don't build new buildings in depopulating locations, since they'll struggle to hire new workers. And keep an eye on pop promotion speed. The characters that appear at the top of the hint are actual in-game members of your cabinet, and they're not pre-scripted. Really? You're gonna play Poland and ask me to pronounce Polish names? The fourth rider is upon us. No hint will save us now. Anyway, as you see, hints try to give an explanation of what's going on and also present some potentially useful recommended actions to follow. Actions that are up to the player to follow, or not, of course, as they have other priorities. So the new Black Death plague has appeared in a certain place called Dardling. If you click the situation alert and therefore you open the situation panel, you get to know where the place is and how the Black Death progresses. So it's starting here in the Golden Horde. Darling is a place where the plague started. I think historically that's like was a bit contentious on that one. Like, you should have started way more east and then come through the Golden Horde. Some month, maybe a year since the plague started, and it's getting closer. So far, this is the panel that you have open quite regularly, just to check the total deaths. This really doesn't affect you. Obviously, the total deaths, if you've got no one dead yet, it doesn't make any difference to you. But it's very nice, I think, and very interesting to just keep having a look at the total deaths. You can also hover over it to see who the country that has been, most harshly ravaged by the plague is, and often that is somewhere in India or somewhere in China, obviously because they have such huge populations, and so they can lose more. After some time, the Black Death may end up reaching your country, and you get the event The Black Death Spreads. The Black Death, killer of mankind, the punishment for our sins, has arrived inside our country. What can we do other than pray? Who knows? Black Death has arrived in Poland, all while we're busy fighting the Teutonic Order in a war. I will say, and I think it is important to point out straight off the bat, that there will be a lot of people, specifically a lot of Polish people, and I'm not saying that you're wrong or anything about this, but that have been taught, that have been told, that believe that Poland was spared the Black Death. And, you look at Black Death maps on Google, and you will see quite often large maps where the plague is spread through all of Europe, and then a gap in Milan and a gap in, all of Poland. And this is kind of contentious, and it is not a complete consensus with historians. There are, of course, some historians who believe that Poland did get off relatively lightly. There are others that think it is simply a matter of a lack of data. I am not a historian. Crazy. I've heard both sides of the story. There was a big, I wouldn't say debate, there was a big thread on it in the content creators Discord channel where we were talking with the developers while we had access. And Zlevik and Lucas at Bella, two Polish content creators who had access, were speaking back and forth with the devs quite a lot about should Poland be spared the Black Death, giving sources backwards and forwards, and so there is they are aware that there is this. I don't want to say narrative because I don't know which side. Like, if I say the fact that Poland was spared, that might be wrong. Or if I say the narrative that Poland was spared, that might be wrong. I don't know which side is more accurate. I just don't know. So whatever it is, they were having a back and forth. The devs are aware that there is that contention. When the Black Death arrives, a variety of options will be available to the players, so we'll have a look in depth at all of them. Very nice. So, Black Death. Now we have the total deaths has risen quite a bit. Our country has had 0 deaths so far. This is before the Black Death has reached us. What we can do is we can move our court into hiding. This will, hopefully, but not guaranteed, spare your ruler, your ruler's family, I believe your cabinet ministers as well. Isolate cities you can only do when the Black Death has entered your country, and I believe after it's entered one of your cities, increases the resistance there. Or not resistance, but it increases something. I can't remember exactly. Controlling the food market means that you can no longer import food or export food, so you have essentially trade lanes which would bring the plague to you can be blocked off. In my experience, not a good idea. It doesn't help, and you just hurt yourself doing it. Isolating the country, exactly the same. Unless you are, I could imagine a situation where you have, say, united the British Isles. In 10 years, that's very unlikely, obviously. But if you have complete control over an entire island, I can potentially foresee a situation where this might work, but I heavily doubt it. I heavily doubt it. Iceland, very easy to be spared the plague because of this. Disease control actions. You can procure some remedies which will import some medicaments into your local market and make medicaments help, and it costs some money. Segregating the infected, I believe, is either a stab hit or a stab boost. Expelling the sick, the same, but even more intense. And you also, with these two, you get a building that you can build. I believe it's called a pest house, where you can essentially, you need to build them to get the sick out of here, essentially. And social actions, sponsor massive forgiveness is a stab boost, and then present scapegoats is, I believe, also a stab boost. But at the end of the Black Death, you kind of got to get rid of these, and then that's a further stab hit. Oh, right, he's going to actually show all of them. Cool. But yeah, court into isolation will hurt your satisfaction with your estates. Isolating cities gives you more control, but less production efficiency, less market attraction, and the impact is 80% less. So isolating cities is one that I think you definitely should do, but here you can see this little X here. Any urban location in your country has the Black Death, is what I think it says, and then you need to have also 20%. So this, very good to do, but costs you 40 stability. But 80% impact is a lot of impact. Controlling the food markets, you can't export or import food. Or maybe you can't export, but maybe you can import. I doubt it though. Exports banned, so that's how that works. Controlling the food market, your estates don't like it, but you go to a traditional economy. Isolating the country, foreigners are banned from imports and exports. You get progress to traditional economy, and your estates don't like it. Again, this one costs stability. Procuring remedies. You procure remedies forever, which is you spend money, you get some satisfaction. You gain... I know you gain medicaments, but I don't know where it's going to show that. Gaining stability and legitimacy is also very nice. And then segregating the infected. Estates don't like it. Stability goes down a little bit, or it decays a bit faster. But you get some disease resistance, which is quite nice. And then expelling the sick. You can now build pest houses where you can yeet the sick into the sea. Sponsoring mass forgiveness, like I said, it gives you some stability. Estates, some estates like it. Clergy get more power as well, but less disease resistance, and then you can pay for the cleric services for that as well. And then finally, presenting the scapegoats and gain some stability. So, given his current situation as Poland in a war with the Teutonic Order and in the middle of a unique Polish disaster called the rise of the that thing. Nope, that thing. And of course, we'll get to that in a future Poland Tinto talk. Also, this... Is that the war banner? Because this looks different to usual. This looks very different to usual. He doesn't really want to get reduced satisfaction with the estate, so the only action he's going to take for the moment is to procure some remedies to actually raise their support. I would actually say that this is a good thing to do as well. Procuring remedies early will get you some medicaments. Even if you have no medicaments in your country, I believe it just like spawns medicaments. I don't think it actually comes from anywhere. But it's really, really good to do. Gaining stability, gaining legitimacy, and etc. To procure as many ingredients needed for the preparation of medicines and remedies against the plague. As well, if you want to build like hospitals, you probably should have started before 1356 because they do take a little bit of time to build, more than a year. If you start building them as soon as the plague appears, they won't be ready by the time the plague hits you if you're playing in, for example, Italy. While the situation is active, random events may pop up, like plague profiteers. They've been buying all the stock for essential goods like medicine, spices, and preserved foods. There's no explicit law which forbids this behavior, but allowing them to extort and starve the commoners could lead to the plague spreading further. So you can temporarily tax them, gain a bit of money. The burghers don't like it, though. A conflict of fads. Them and commoners alike are currently waging a war of culture over the best behavior to ward off the plague. Some lock themselves away at home, eating little and praying much, hoping that austerity will save them. Others break into abandoned houses, drink like the plague will take them tomorrow, and indulge in sin until sunrise. We do not know if either of these behaviors will actually alleviate the plague, but supporting one of them might prove beneficial to the state. So for austerity, then, you know, you consume less food, which might be useful. But if you have self-indulgence, the commoners like it, and then every location in Gneisenau that has not already overcome the disease, I definitely pronounce that in the German way because of the ship Gneisenau. Gneisno, I don't know how to do it in Polish, I apologize. Anyway, increase the spread of the plague by 10%, but you get pop satisfaction by 10%. I definitely think austerity is the better option there. Some months into the game, the Black Death keeps spreading, and you obviously can see the darker color is where it is more impacting. Some more events. Another one bites the dust. Nice. I like that. And it was this guy. Rich men trust not in wealth. Gold cannot buy you health. Physic himself must fade. All things to an end are made. The plague full swift goes by. I am sick. I must die. No hint could save him. Anyway, plague as punishment. The end times are upon us, or at least so claim the ever-growing groups of flagellants that wander through the countryside, processioning and preaching of apocalyptic events to come. I mean, it was pretty apocalyptic, to be fair. Which, through only Christ's ire, as flagellation, we can dispel. While originally having to spoil the church, these groups have strayed too far from doctrine to be sanctioned anymore. The clergy believe they must be stamped out to prevent them from undermining stability. So you can either instruct local garrisons to disperse them, or never mind the church. Those flagellants might be onto something. On our side story, we've been able to piece out the Teutons, and now they focus their efforts on managing the Black Death. Also, nice map. It's looking good. I do think they have definitely done something to the texture on the ground. So this, I believe, before would have just been essentially one block color all the way, but now there's definitely more. It's not texture in like a height map way, but its texture is in like the actual colors on the map. It's just looking much, much nicer. So big fan of that. More progress is appreciated, of course. Focusing on the war is taking its toll, though. So his current country deaths is 354,000. But now he can isolate the country if he so wishes. He still can't isolate the cities, though, because he doesn't have it in, I think it was 20% or something like that. But you can also see the total population of Poland. You can see when he raised his levies here, I believe. And then here is where the Black Death hit. So, yeah, that kind of hurts. Not sure how he gained population here. It might have been either returning levies back to the pool, or it might have been he separate peaced with somebody to take some territory, something like that. I'm not sure. We used some of the money that was hoarded, plus what we took from the Teutons and the peace deal, to build some hospitals. It's far too late for that, son. We have a new UI for this. This is looking very, very new. Different to how it was when I played. I would need to play it to really see how I feel about it. It looks a little more basic, a lot cleaner, but a lot more like sterile kind of cleaner. And it kind of doesn't really fit in my opinion, with like this kind of filigree background, and that's kind of the theme that they're going for. This kind of feels a little bit too clinical for me. We got some more events as well. The epidemic overextension. The Kingdom of Poland is vast and proud, but our size makes it hard to respond to epidemic outbreaks in different corners of our kingdom simultaneously. Before us lie two options. We can either maintain centralized control over the response, which we left as effective, or we can empower local authorities to deal with their own outbreaks. Either way, the kingdom will survive. We must simply make peace with the question of whether a sacrifice of blood or political power is best in these dark times. So you can maintain central control at all costs, which will give you a bit more control, but the states won't like it, and the rebels will grow a bit faster. And a couple of years since it reached our country, we're now in January 1350, no more locations in our country are affected by the Black Death, but still taking a big death toll. So total deaths is 54 million. His own country getting 470,000. So about, what's that, like 40% of his day one population? It's a big hit. It is a massive, massive hit. The plague will ravage the world for some time to come, but at least it's over in our country, which will now have to face new challenges. That's all for today. They'll come back on Friday. All right. Tinto flavor for about the man looks. There are some comments that we're going to go through, and in these comments is like the controversial part about the Black Death that is being talked about. So, start off here. Will the Black Death sweep across the entire old world as it originally did, or will it primarily be confined to Europe? So it's semi-dynamic, so it'll depend on each game. For instance, in his current game, the country that got impacted the most was Delhi. You can also see your rivals and how they got affected as well. So yeah, Delhi, almost 8 million, France getting 3 million, Castile 2.7, England 2.1. It's a big deal. It is a big deal. The Black Death does hurt quite a bit. There's also a couple of game rules about it that you can tweak. Default values is 1346 and Central Asia. You can also just turn it off, but I would not recommend to do that. I definitely would not recommend to do that. But yeah, no, I think having default is fine. It's fine. I don't know how I should feel about it since you haven't addressed the elephant in the room. The ahistorical spread of the plague into Asia, specifically India, China, and Japan. Any word on that would be much appreciated. So, since the last time the Black Death was shown, they've addressed the resistance to the disease in several regions, which China is the most important. The higher the resistance, the less time and impact the disease has in our game. On top of that, please take into account that numbers are a matter of constant rebalance, and the Black Death is probably the situation that has received more balance changes since it was first implemented in the game, since it's probably the most impactful. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for it to do that, and I'm sure more tweaks will happen before release, and also probably after release as well. An issue that has been raised is that the Black Death is not punishing enough in the game. This is the controversial issue that I keep talking about. Could this be at the start because almost all your pups are unemployed, so losing half of them doesn't feel like much of a setback? This is, I believe I gave this exact example in a previous video. What if countries started with much higher RGO levels, more buildings to employ more pops, then the Black Death would destroy those as well. Then you would feel what you lose, decimated not only pops but taxes and profits as well. So, Pavia here is saying that in his ongoing current game, he's lost almost 50% of his population to the plague. His income before was around 10 monthly ducats, and as of right now it's 4.49. It is having an impact both in the short term and the long run. This is the part that is really important, and the next comment will kind of push that as well. Macbeth here is saying, one of the recurring points of feedback from YouTubers, I believe it was mostly just one YouTuber that kept talking about this point, who got to play an early build, was the Black Death didn't feel impactful in the long term. It took a financial hit in the short term from trade collapsing, but since so much wealth generation is tied to building employment, and the vast majority of the population in the early game is subsistence farming, peasant deadweight losing a third of your population had virtually no economic impact, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. So I believe Mr. Macbeth here has it backwards, because the YouTubers in question, I'm just going to say it's Playmaker, their comment was less, it didn't feel impactful long term, and more, it didn't feel impactful right now. It didn't feel impactful when the Black Death ended. It didn't feel impactful in the incredibly short term. That was his comment, his point. This wasn't it. Financial hit in the short term was also not his comment. His comment was that he did not take a financial hit. And that was his claim that, you know, the Black Death isn't impactful enough because he didn't take the hit. So yeah. So Johan here having a reply here. They fail to account for accumulated growth, like if you invest 500 or 1,000 a day, which are most likely to give more money in the long term. Lost population is a long-term killer. And I agree with him. So yes, you can have the Black Death hit you, and because I mean, this part is right, that the vast majority of the population is dead weight, for sure. You are going to not feel the hit as much, because in the immediate term, economically, as in the ducats in your wallet, because these guys who died generally weren't paying all that much taxes anyway. And the people who die that do work in the buildings have a large amount, maybe not so as large as before, but still large enough amount of these subsistence farming peasant deadweight to promote into those jobs. So in the immediacy, yes, that peasant deadweight is not really something that you're going to feel. But in the long term, that is going to be something you feel, because there's less peasant deadweight to farm, so the amount of food that you will have in your country will be lower, and the amount of accumulated total months of spare food is directly impacting your population growth. So if you have less food, you have less population growth, and if you have less pops, you have less population growth. So you're just having fewer people in the long term. So you won't feel it in 1356, but in 1370, 1470, 1500, those lack of pops are making an impact on your country. So if you can do whatever you can to mitigate the loss of life in the immediacy, 150 years down the line, it is going to be felt if you know where to look. And the mechanics to stop the plague transmitting across overland borders all that quickly. Pretty much every country was infected from its ports rather than its overland borders. If it had ports, sometimes it took years for it to transmit over unpopulated land, such as through the steppes, etc., etc. So, Pavi here replying, there is an ongoing review by historians about the spread and lethality of the plague, contending the traditional values, of which probably the Polish one is on top of his head. In any case, from a gameplay perspective, we didn't want to make it possible to completely lock a border, which I absolutely agree with. I think players having the knowledge that the Black Death is a big frickin' deal and oh my god, we need to be worried right now, is something that the rulers of the time absolutely did not know. In basically every case. So, firstly, you know, you as a player getting a little notification, oh yeah, by the way, over in the Golden Horde, this country you do not give a single solitary shard of shite about, it's got this got a little disease going on, and they're calling it the Black Death. You as the player know what this is. You know what this means, and you make all of the preparations necessary. And if you can lock your country, if you could lock your country, you absolutely would. But that is completely ahistorical, and it's completely just narratively wrong, and gives the player such an advantage to know what's coming. So it makes absolute sense that you're not given that option. Absolute sense. From a gameplay perspective, they didn't want to make it possible to completely lock a border in the case of the spread of the disease, because the player would actually know how lethal it is, making it too powerful in action, and potentially the Black Death meaningless at all. However, as he's shown, some actions can be taken beforehand while it's ongoing to mitigate its effects. Also, some of the events provoke negative migration attractions, so the pups could potentially migrate away from your country as well if you, if you have those events. Add another indication of how hurtful the Black Death is. He had around 8k levies in his war against the Teutons, and now he has 6.7k. Lacking of urbanization of the Golden Horde, it's got some towns here and there. Nice. Any chance of an option, the Black Death follows the historical spread. So they've been putting their efforts towards making the dynamic part of it work as good as possible instead of hard scripting it the historical way. This could potentially be done differently by modders. And also, again, by whose account? Again, like I said at the start, this is not a settled debate. There is contention here. We can generally get a good vibe for when the plague hit certain places. Mostly based, but the idea that, like, say, does the plague hit Poland? If the game is saying, if the game has a follow historical spread, and then the plague hits Poland, a lot of Polish people are going to be like, yo, wait, what's up with this? No, this isn't what I thought. Whereas if the plague doesn't hit Poland, then others will say that this is not accurate. So having, making dynamic spread the norm and as good as it can be is absolutely the best of all worlds here. The Pest House, and seeing what it does and what it is. Increases unrest, but increases disease resistance by 30%. It seems a pretty good thing to build, but you also need to have some death in your country before it happens, before you can have the option of building these. And you know what? Maybe you don't have enough money for them as well. So this might be a case of a too little, too late building, but maybe you're going to build it anyway. But yeah, You can build it in town, cities, and rural areas. It's staffed by the clergy. Costs you 50 ducats and a bit of masonry and glass. And it's staffed, or production method is medicaments and incense, I believe that is. Will the bubonic plague have secondary outbreaks in succeeding decades, separate from the Black Death? So Pavi here saying that after the situation ends, there may be other outbreaks of the bubonic plague, which might be more or less deadly, depending on the resistance of the pops. So here is his Black Death tab. Total death is 59 million now, and I think this is his own country. Yeah, it is. And I believe in this, one of the comments that I have here, the disease actually comes back into his country afterwards as well. Interestingly, you chose Poland as an example here, even though it was not, or the least, affected by the Black Death. This is exactly the point I'm bringing up. It could be represented by some temporary modifier for Poland, maybe Lithuania, if they have an ongoing disaster at the same time. So, Pavi here saying they discussed a lot about the spread of the Black Death in Poland because they've had a lot of Poles working for the project. Zlevik and Lucas gave us feedback both from them and from their communities when they got access to the game some months ago. Our stance is, 1. Recent historical articles have been challenging the traditional view of the Black Death in Poland, and 2. They want to favor dynamic approach to the situation over hard scripting it too much. So in the case of his game, he was playing as a warmongering King Casimir that took very little care about the Black Death when it was spreading over Poland, but different players may follow different approaches to it. I don't think it's going to be possible for a player playing as Poland to have a situation where they are just completely unaffected by the Black Death, as one of the narratives about the Black Death in Poland tends to say it is. I don't think that's going to be possible, and I'm personally fine with it. I know that there are some Poles who would not be fine with it. But what can you do? You got to make a choice somewhere, don't you? Does the plague affect armies in any way, such as through significant increase in attrition in infected locations, etc.? Armies can be heavily impacted by diseases in general, not just the bubonic plague, and they can also spread disease while moving. So, if you want to be, Papa Nurgle's army of the dead, take your army, march it into a province or a location that has the plague, and then march it into your enemy's land just to make sure that they also get the plague. Because, why not? So here, the comment that I was mentioning, by the way, they're doing a play and fix session at the studio, so as he's replying, and he kept playing, and the plague has returned. He has one location, Krakow, that now has regained the plague. So time to do more of these little button clicks. And then finally, he likes the new hint system. One question, does disease resistance only accumulate with every disease outbreak, or does it also slowly decline over time? If so, by how much? So, yes, it does. It accumulates with every disease outbreak, and then it slowly declines after that. Very nice. And then here, the Black Death finally ended in 1354. 95 million pops has died. So, when I was playing, the standard was 150 million pops dead every game. So here is just a snippet from my video. I couldn't get to I don't think I looked at the very end of it. But as you can see, we had 139.7 million pops die at this point, which was in 1350. So there's a few years left to go, but 139 versus the oh gosh, where is it gone? 95 million. So it seems like they might have even made the Black Death less deadly since I played, or maybe he just got very lucky. Because I do know that with basically every game that all of the YouTubers played, we all had roughly 150 million total. So yeah, that's interesting. Interesting that they made it a little bit less deadly. But I would like to know your thoughts on this whole topic and subject. Do you think the Black Death is deadly enough? Do you think that the impacts of the Black Death are impactful enough? Do you wish you had a plague mask? I do, but mostly because they look cool. The vibes are just... but anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button and comment down below and all that kind of good stuff. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.